You ready? All right. We're recording the interview of Peter A. Dobrotvorsky. The interview is being conducted by James Hale, Katora Edwards, and Jennifer Seavey from Wright State University Veterans Voices Project. The interview is being recorded at Wright State University Veterans Military Center in Dayton, Ohio. It is 3:45 p.m., 20 July 2017. Peter, so where and when were you born?
I was born in Wood County Hospital in Bowling Green, Ohio.
Okay. And then, who are your parents and what are their occupations?
My mother is a translator. She speaks English, Russian, French, German, and some Portuguese. My father was a Soviet Navy officer. He served 22 years from 1966 till 1988.
Do you have any siblings?
I have one half-brother.
Did he serve in the military?
He's too young. I have a half-brother and a half-sister. I've never met them.
And what were you doing before you joined the services?
I went to an all-boys Catholic military school, Benedictine College Preparatory in Richmond, Virginia.
How was that?
It's different. It was different.
Can you explain to me maybe a situation that happened there that might make it different from other schools?
I think part of it was situation and time and place. I was born to two Russian parents, and from a very young age, actually from birth, I gained dual citizenship. I became a U.S. citizen by virtue of being born on the territory of the United States, and I became a Russian citizen by virtue of being born to two Russian citizens. I spent from 2 to about 10, I lived in Russia, and I actually didn't start speaking English until I was about 8. And a lot of my very early formative ideas regarding culture, social interaction, and politics were very heavily influenced by living in Russia and living with my grandparents in Russia, who are Russian. Yes.
And how do you feel that made your opinions change?
It made me question a lot of the things that were given to me as fact, and this extended not only in high school but actually throughout my military career. It's that compounded with the political situation that happened during my last year in the service regarding my two countries of citizenship really solidified my decision to get out of the Navy.
And what had happened?
My last year in the Navy, I disclosed on all of my forms that I was a dual citizen when I entered the service, and it wasn't a problem until my last year. Russia repatriated the isthmus of, and my last year in the service, I was actually investigated by NCIS for being a dual citizen, and I wasn't very nervous because I didn't feel as if I'd done anything wrong, and I had all the paperwork to prove it. I told them in the beginning, I didn't lie, but I felt very uncomfortable working for the government of one of my countries of citizenship. Actually, I feel very uncomfortable, and I would feel very uncomfortable working for the government or government service, anything affiliated with the government of any country at this point.
Do you feel the situation could have been handled differently?
I understand that they were doing their job. It's just, I didn't like being put in that position of feeling that I had to basically pick sides. I'm American and Russian, and the two to me are not mutually exclusive. I love the United States. I like hamburgers, shooting guns. I like Russia as well, and I fit in there culturally very well. It's just the way it is.
Let's rewind a little bit to your early days of service.
All right.
All right. So, which branch did you serve?
I was in the United States Navy.
All right. And you were active duty?
I was active duty for 5 years.
Is there a reason why you chose that branch?
For 5 generations, every male in my family has served in the Navy of his country of citizenship, regardless of what that country is. It's a family tradition.
Is that something you'd like to pass on as well if you could?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
My boy's going to the Navy. I don't care what countries, but he's going to the Navy.
What was your basic training like?
It was a lot easier than I expected it to be, honestly. Growing up in Russia, military service for a male is considered a rite of passage, and for me it was never a question of if I went into the military, it was when. And I heard a lot of stories, especially from other members of my family, some of my cousins, about, you know, boot camp and this and that. It was a lot easier. I was very professional. I was actually very surprised. It was not what I was expecting it to be.
Why is that?
I thought it'd be tougher, physically, mentally. I thought it'd be more taxing, but honestly, it just seemed... To be honest with you, about half of boot camp seemed like a show for the final graduation ceremony. We spent half our time practicing for it. I didn't... It was disappointing. Disappointing.
Could you recall an event or time where it was most difficult for you?
Boot camp. It was most difficult? It wasn't very difficult. It wasn't.
Do you recall any instructors?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Couple. 81 Dale. I remember him. He was a douchebag.
What made him stick out as a douchebag?
Well, he was my RDC. I'm 188 centimeters. And he wasn't. And he was quite aware of it. And he wasn't very happy with people who were taller than he was. It was what it was.
So what was your job in the Navy?
I was a hospital corpsman.
What was that like?
It was interesting. It was cool. It was all right. I learned a lot of things that I can't actually use outside of the military. Medical stuff, you know, applies. It was good overall. I enjoyed my job. Wasn't bad. It was rewarding at times. Yeah.
What do you mean when you say you can't use medical stuff?
I can use it. I get the idea that if I was trained, if the military trained me to be an EOD tech, there's not a lot of places in the civilian world where I can, you know,
find a job.
Yeah. That being said, I have done nothing in the medical field as a civilian since I've gotten out. But I guess if someone got hit by a car on the side of the road, I would be slightly more prepared than the average individual.
Did you receive any specialized training?
Apart from to be a corpsman, I got trained to be a corpsman.
Did
I
you
went
have to do
FMTB. Yeah, I got an NEC 8404.
And what does all that mean?
Field Medical Service Technician. I wasn't stationed with the Marines, but I could have been. So I actually went hospital to hospital. I worked at Naval Hospital Great Lakes for 2 years. I worked at 1007 Tranquility and 1523 Red Rover. I gave all of the boot camp recruits their shots and I drew their blood. Then I worked for 2 years at Naval Hospital Naples in Italy. I worked both years at Naval Branch Health Clinic Capodichino. So it was pretty relaxed. It's a small little base. It's like 100 meters by half a kilometer. It's a top.
So were you on the boat or on land?
I was on land.
On land.
I
So
was on land. Yeah.
what was Italy like?
Italy? It was
Yeah.
cool. I learned Italian. I ate a lot of good food. I enjoyed Italy. I would definitely go back. I spent quite a bit more time off base and talking to locals than a lot of other people did, I feel. I tried to make the most of it. Certainly.
Is there anything that really sticks out that was special to you in Italy?
Pizza.
Pizza.
In Naples specifically, not in Italy, in Naples, but Naples is the birthplace of pizza, and as such, they themselves are held to a quite high standard. And for me now, it's very difficult to call anything else a pizza. It can be good, but it's not a pizza. It's a pie. If it's not made in Naples, it's not a pizza.
Is there something that they do differently in Naples? Or is it just better quality in general?
Yeah, it's like the whole thing all together. It's, you should go.
So while you're in Italy, what'd you do for fun out there? Other than to eat pizza.
I interacted with the local population. Rode around on a moped. Yeah. I don't know how informal this is. So.
I'm just watching language.
Yeah. No,
You can talk about your experiences and everything.
It was
like
fun.
that.
It was cool. It was like being anywhere else. I mean, I don't change hobbies from country to country.
Yeah.
No, I do the same stuff. Sit around, watch TV, eat food, go out, talk to girls, drink. Same things.
So how did you adapt to the military life?
There were certain things of military life that I adapted to quite well, that I was relatively familiar with. There were a couple of other aspects that were a little bit more difficult. The military likes to have a quite substantial grasp on your personal life and your interactions, and I was not very interested in that. Another thing is being America. You like to paint shit up, like. If you ask an American a question, he's always going to give you a positive answer. That's just how culturally you guys are. And me, I'm not. If you ask me a question, you're going to get an answer. And that caused a couple of issues in the military. When someone would ask me a question and I'd tell them what I thought, and then they got upset because I told them what I thought, because they asked me. Not a fault of mine, I feel, but that was an ever-present issue during my 5-year enlistment. My willingness to open my mouth.
So what about like the physical regimen in the military life?
It was very easy. It was boringly easy. I was surprised at how easy it was. I was surprised to some of the people that passed, to be honest.
What about adapting to the travel and everything like that? I know you said you were from Russia and America.
Yeah,
so.
I love traveling. I do. I enjoy flying. I love going new places. The travel didn't bother me. Being separated from my family didn't bother me. I've done all that. By the time I was 18, I'd traveled by myself internationally. I liked it.
Was it just Russia and America, or were you other places as well?
I've been to several other countries. My mother thought it very important for me to see the world. By the time I'd gone to the military, I'd been to United States, Canada, Russia, Belarus, Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Germany, and I believe that's it. Yeah, that's it.
What did you do during all your travels?
Met my family. Relaxed. You know, did touristy stuff. Yeah. Same thing I do anywhere else. So.
Were you ever on any deployments or TDYs?
I was not.
No. But you have traveled a lot.
I did. I've traveled quite a bit in and outside of the military.
Where have you been since you've been 18?
Since I've been 18, I went to Italy. I've been to the Vatican, which is its own country. I went to Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan. I went to Spain. I forgot about that. And Poland. I've traveled around to some of the other places that I've been to before, but in terms of new countries, Poland, Spain, Kazakhstan, and Kyrgyzstan.
And while you were away from your family, did you keep in touch with them at all?
Yeah, I email them.
Email them?
We're not a very physically close family. Like, my mother lives here in Ohio. My grandmother lives in St. Petersburg. Most of my cousins live in Kazakhstan. We're an email family. Yeah.
So you said you went from base to base a few different times, right?
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel going from one place to another to another? You know, not on your own, but because you were told to.
I liked it.
Yeah.
It didn't bother me. It was cool. So I'm gonna go over there now. Oh, okay, that's over there. That's new. Ooh. Yeah.
How did you feel returning home?
Home is a very home is difficult to define. During my 5 years, I was unable to travel to Russia. I went to Richmond, Virginia, where my mother lived at the time after I got out of the Navy, and I lived with her for about 2 months while I was getting ready to move back to Russia. I was actually very happy to move back to Russia. I lived in Russia for 2 years immediately after being discharged. I live there now. I'm attending Wright State for 1 semester to get a TEFL certificate to go back and teach English in Russia. And I was very, very happy to return home. And it made me... no country's perfect. And deciding where you want to live is a balance of choosing the problems that you're willing to live with. And moving back to Russia, especially after having lived in having seen Italy and stayed there for an extended period of time, long enough to understand the political situation and talk to some of the locals, and having traveled and lived in the United States, it made me really appreciate what my country had to offer and the rights and freedoms that we do have in Russia.
What are some differences in the rights?
We're
A lot?
We're opening up an interesting kettle of fish. A lot. I will say I didn't even bother trying to get my medical care through the VA. It was easier for me to go back home and be treated as a Russian citizen under the socialized system. I walked into a clinic and showed them my passport, and they're like, "Oh yeah, well,
So is it free
what do
medical?
you need?" What's up?
Is it free medical in Russia?
Yes, we have free medical care for all citizens. We have free medical care for all people, but you might get deported afterwards. But we will fix you. I don't know, it gave me a much larger perspective regarding a lot of things. I've met a lot of people throughout my travels that have a very distorted and grass is always greener on the other side. I've met a lot of people who want to come to America, who think the streets are lined with gold and this and that. And a lot of them question my decision to live where I live, and honestly to travel in certain cases. But I feel it's been a very educational experience, especially my upbringing here. I feel it gives me a much wider base of knowledge on which to make decisions about my life and to feel more comfortable with those decisions.
So with the medical being free in Russia, do you think that that system works a lot better than how it does in America?
I do.
Yes.
I do. I do. And yeah, another thing is honestly is gun control, and I love firearms. I mean, as you know, we've been shooting, but the United States needs to regulate the sale of firearms to individuals. In Russia, it's regulated. I own a firearm in Russia. I went through a background check. I went through a vision check. I went through a hearing test. I talked to a psychiatrist. I went through 2 classes regarding safety. One regarding safety and one regarding the specific firearm I was buying. I had the police come to my home to make sure that I bought a safe and it had been installed properly. I feel much more comfortable living in Russia at the end of the day regarding most issues. I feel safer living there.
So it's more difficult to get a weapon in Russia?
I wouldn't say it's more difficult because it was relatively easy, but it was a relatively long process. And when I purchased my first gun in the United States, it was shocking how easy it was. They didn't ask me if I knew where the safety was. They didn't ask me if I knew which calibers were safe to fire in it. They sold me something, the intent of which is to kill people and animals, and they didn't ask me anything about it. And that was scary.
So if you're unable to, say, get a license to carry a weapon in Russia, is there anything else that you could carry with you to protect yourself?
In Russia, the right to carry and possess a bladed weapon is enshrined almost higher than the Constitution, enshrined almost higher than the Second Amendment is in the United States. In Russia, if you are 16, it doesn't matter if you're a citizen or not, it doesn't matter if you've been in prison for 20 years or you've been adjudicated mentally insane, it is your right to walk down the street with a bladed weapon. Honestly, it's different. A knife is a much more personal weapon, whereas firearms can be used at much greater distances. But at the end of the day, I still feel safer there. If you look to the letter of the law, which I like to do, in Ohio currently it is illegal to carry any type of pocket knife at all. Realistically, are they going to stop and harp you on it? No. But in Russia, I feel very, very comfortable. If a cop ever sees the clip, I just tell him, it's my knife. Go away. So.
Are there any other laws that you think are completely different between Russia and America?
That are completely different?
Yeah.
Most of them.
Most of them?
Most of them.
Now, earlier you said that you weren't able to go to Russia for 5 years. Was that your choice because you're in the military?
No, the military puts onerous regulations on its members regarding travel, and it just got more and more complicated. And my citizenship situation helped further compound the issue because they wanted to scan off my visa, but I couldn't get a visa because I'm a Russian citizen. The Navy wouldn't let me go until I had a visa, which means I couldn't go because I can't get a visa. It was just a hot mess. So I decided my life is a lot easier and simpler just outside of the military.
So finally leaving the military, were you able to go home and see your family?
I was, yes, I was.
And,
I moved back. I saw my babushka. I visited Kazakhstan about a year ago. I met some of my cousins I hadn't met before. It was good. Yeah, I like it.
And how did your family receive you when you came home?
Mostly well. There's a couple members of my family that I don't know very well who think I'm crazy. Actually, they think me and my mom are crazy. They don't understand why we want to leave the United States. My mother's in the process of moving to Nepal. They don't understand why we want to leave the United States. They just have a very idealistic view. And it's very difficult to explain to them that, you know, people in American Samoa aren't U.S. citizens, they're U.S. nationals. People in Guam can't vote, even though like a third of them are vets. It adds up after a while.
And how did your family feel with you joining the American Navy versus the Russian?
None. No qualms.
No qualms.
None at all. Military service is military service. At 18, you go to the Army, you become a man. Doesn't matter whose Army.
Is that how your Russian community feels as well? Yes. How was it readjusting back to the civilian life?
Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
Oh, it's amazing.
How so?
Oh, yeah, I don't have that little, like, voice in the back of my head that says, you have to be sober for formation, or you have to be at work in 2 hours, or staff sergeant's gonna yell at you if you get a tattoo on your face, or whatever. I feel so much more free. I can travel to another country without doing more paperwork. I don't have to ask permission to leave the toilet seat up, or I don't get my personal space inspected, which is great. I hated room inspections. I don't hate the principal. I hated being judged for what they saw in my room. Like, it's unprofessional. Like, yeah, I like computers. Go away. Leave me alone. Like, in any other job, my boss wouldn't know what I do at home. And it really bothered me that in the military, it was sort of one and the same. What I do on my time it's my time. And I don't think an employer has any business knowing what I do when I'm not at my place of work, assuming I'm sober.
Now, when did you decide to leave the military?
Before I went in.
Yeah.
I mean, no one goes into the military and go, right, this is it. This is it. I'm gonna die there. You know? No, I knew I was gonna be a one and done. I didn't want to do 20 years. My father hated it. My grandfather served 25 years in the Royal Russian Navy. And he also hated it. But back then, the Russian Empire had like 30-year conscription. So all men served 30 years. I guess my grandfather was a little lucky with 25, but no, I knew I was getting out as soon as I went in.
Have you done any traveling since you've been out of the military?
You asked me that already.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, you asked since I was 18,
yeah,
which is a slightly different worded question, but the answer is the same.
Okay. Have you remained in contact with anybody you served with?
A few people, yeah. Yeah, I'm quite good and close friends with some people I was in the service with.
And who are they?
Different people. You know, some hick in Indiana, some guy down in Texas, just random and odd people. Mostly corpsmen, mostly people I worked with. You see someone every day for like a year, you sort of warm up to them.
So how do you keep in touch with everybody all over the place?
Internet.
Internet.
Yeah, internet. Facebook, email, VK, whatever.
Are you a member of any veterans organizations?
I don't think so. No. Not unless I joined one by accident, which is entirely possible.
So going back to, where was your basic training at?
My basic training was conducted at Great Lakes.
Great Lakes.
The only place basic training is currently conducted for the U.S. Navy.
Okay. And after that, where was your first duty station?
My first duty station was in Great Lakes. My A school was in Great Lakes. I had a C school at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. I chose to stay in Great Lakes for a girl. Don't do that. That was a mistake. The area's all right. I enjoyed living near Chicago and in a big city, and I sort of enjoyed my job while I was there as well. But don't pick orders for a girl.
What was your average day like?
I worked at 2 different workspaces. I worked at 1007 Tranquility, in which case my average day, I'd wake up around 6:30, shave, attempt to make myself look presentable, toss on my uniform, catch a ride to work with someone, because I'm 25 and I still have to own a car. Go to work, put up with HM2 Moore, who's still in HM2. Not surprising, but I'd help out with recruits. If they went to sick call at their ship and it was decided that they needed further treatment, they came to 1007 Tranquility, and I helped to do whatever it is that they needed done. And then I worked at 1523, which is a little more interesting. Woke up at 3 in the morning, every morning. I'd be at work at 4. We started drawing the blood of the recruits who arrived 2 days ago at about 4:30 in the morning. And then we would give immunizations to the recruits it was their 4th day. And then we'd give them the penicillin shot. And then occasionally we'd have recruits from the 5-2 week of training, and we'd give them immunizations as well. It was a firing squad of immunization. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. It's mass scale medicine.
Now, is that the same at every duty station that you've been to?
No. When I was in Italy, I worked at a clinic all 2 years. Showed up to work, see some patients, move some papers around, go eat lunch, go home. Standard clinic.
Have you ever seen, did you ever witness any combat?
No.
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 Was there any military experiences that affected your life?
What do you mean?
Having like daily routines or anything like that? Did it affect you in the long run at all? Or maybe being stuck with...
I still wear a rigger's belt.
Yeah.
Yeah. I still wear my watch on the inside of my wrist. Probably. If I thought about it more, probably. Yeah. Yeah, probably.
Then what are some life lessons that you've possibly learned from the military service?
Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't trust people who have made a decision, ran with it, and don't know anything else. And a lot of lessons in my personal life. Just leave it at that. I will say, I'm not sure why, but everybody in my chain of command wanted me to re-enlist, and I didn't want to re-enlist. But it was an uphill battle to sign my intent to separate form. They didn't want me to sign it. I had a very difficult time being lectured by people who joined the military at 18, and now they've been in for 12 years, and they're basically telling me that I can't do anything else with my life. Just because they made the decision that they can't do anything else with their life doesn't mean that I can't. And at basically any possible turn, it seemed like they were trying to scare me into re-enlisting. I had a first class who asked, how are you going to get medical care? And I said, well, I replied that I'm the citizen of a civilized country and we get medical care for free. And she sort of looked at me like, why would you want to leave the U.S.? I said, well, I don't like it here. I don't feel that I fit in culturally. I did my bit. Leave me alone. Like, why do you care? And I had that with a lot of my chain of command. And lo and behold, here I am, 2 years later. I don't live in a ditch. I'm not homeless. Ha! H&1 Wolf.
So how has your military service impacted your feelings about war?
I don't think it's impacted my feelings about war, specifically.
What about the military in general?
I was going to say I don't think that the military affected the way I feel about war. War is bad. The military changed my perception of why the United States chooses to go to war and the places it chooses to occupy. When I was 18, I really didn't know too much. Honestly, when I was 18, I was more familiar with the Russian government and the Russian legal system than I was with the U.S. one. I myself was a little bit naive regarding the United States and some of its practices. And living in the U.S. for 5 years, being in the U.S. military for 5 years really did open my eyes up to that quite a bit. I had a roommate who was from Saipan, who told me that people in the Northern Mariana Islands, despite being U.S. citizens, aren't allowed to vote, along with Guam and Puerto Rico. And I met a lot of people from different parts of the United States, and I guess socialized with them, heard their problems, and I heard some good things too. I'm not trying to make it out like it's all negative, but I'd like people to understand that this isn't a be-all, end-all. Americans have a lot of national pride and like to say that they're the best country in the world and back-to-back World War II winners or whatever the fuck. And it just, when you have the option of living somewhere else and integrating perfectly and you know the language and you're a citizen and it's very easy to live there, it's difficult to show this experience to an American because it'd be very difficult to take them to a place where that would be possible for them. But in my case specifically, I choose to live in Russia after having been born and raised here, and the military, in a way, pushed me towards that. So.
You said that you've had positive experiences in America.
Yeah, sure, certainly, yeah.
Could you describe one of those, maybe?
A couple river trips. Went just like floating down the river. We had a 96 or a 4-day weekend when I was in Great Lakes, and me and two of my friends drove down to one of their parents' houses, and they took me in like I was their kid practically. Yeah, it was great, and I actually still talk to some of the people I met on that trip. So no, it was cool. We went mudding and rode 4-wheelers and canoeing, and it was cool. Yeah, it was fun. So, done a lot of cool outdoorsy stuff like that in the United States, and I enjoyed it.
Is there anything you feel like we haven't discussed or should be added to this interview?
No, I guess the largest takeaway I want to, I guess, give people whenever they're watching this is there's two sides to every story. No matter how it's presented to you, get a second translation, and don't believe your first source.
All right, well, this concludes our interview. Thank you very much for your time and your service.
Of course.